Hello and welcome to What Were You Thinking? I'm Laura Round, and in this podcast I ask politicians and opinion formers about the people, places and experiences that have impacted their thinking. In this episode I am joined by Gillian Keegan, Minister for Apprenticeships and Skills in the Department for Education and MP for Chichester. It was through a chance encounter that Gillian embarked on the route of becoming a Member of Parliament, and we talk about the very special person who was pivotal in that career change, and of many other female Conservative MPs for that matter. We also discuss the importance of skills and lifelong learning. Gillian is well known for being the first apprentice to become Minister for Apprenticeships, but what most people don't realise is that she is also a Sloan Fellow from the London Business School, which is a pretty distinguished master's programme designed for experienced business executives. We also talk about the influence Liverpool and Madrid have had on her thinking and life, as well as her grandfather's miner's lamp and the importance of skills in the economic recovery. This episode is supported by BAE Systems, one of the largest UK employers. BAE Systems helps its customers to stay a step ahead when protecting people and national security, critical infrastructure and vital information. They are using their knowledge and technologies to reduce the environmental impacts of their activities and have set themselves the target of achieving net zero greenhouse gas emissions across their operations by 2030. With £3 billion of export sales from the UK annually, BAE Systems has a central role in the engineering and manufacturing fabric of the country, supporting 124,000 high-value jobs across the UK through a supply chain of some 6,000 companies. They have committed to developing high-quality skills and invest nearly £100 million per annum in training and education programmes in the UK. This investment includes training some 2,000 apprentices and 500 graduates currently. They also help disadvantaged young people into employment through their support of the Kickstart and Movement to Work programmes. Gillian, thank you so much for coming on to What Were You Thinking? You have for a long time been one of my favourite MPs, a real role model, I have to say. So thank you so much for coming on. And to start off, why don't we delve straight into what person has had a real impact on your thinking?
Oh, thanks, Laura, and thanks for those lovely words. That's a nice way to start. There's probably a couple of people I would say. The first is probably the guy at my school who believed in me, who gave me a bit of confidence, and also led me onto an apprenticeship, really, at 16. That was a guy called Mr. Ashcroft. And effectively, what he did was there was a bit of a rule at the time that only girls could only do certain subjects and boys could only do the engineering and stuff like that. And it wasn't because of any sexism, it's because of the way they scheduled PE, believe it or not. Anyway, I wasn't happy with this. And my mom sort of went up to school and kind of said she wants to do engineering and technical drawing and all of these subjects. And anyway, they couldn't accommodate me. So Mr. Ashcroft stayed after school for 3 days a week till 5:30 for 2 years to basically get me up to O-level, as it was then, standard in all of those. And he, I'll never forget that sacrifice, because he set me on a path where I really appreciated technology, and B, he got me to a position where I got extra O-levels. So I got 10 O-levels from a comprehensive school in Knowsley, which was quite impressive even at the time. And then he got me, he sort of led me down the apprenticeship route to continue my studies, and that's been a really life-changing moment. And without him, none of that would have happened. So I think that's the first one. And then the second big person who's influenced life-changing ways is Baroness Anne Jenkin, because there I was nearly 30 years in the business world, and a random encounter with her has completely put me on a new path in the world of politics, and obviously got to meet you and got to do all the fantastic things that you do as an MP for a constituency and now as a minister.
Firstly, Mr. Ashcroft, that is incredible. That is just a really nice story, actually. That's so inspiring, and the role and power of teachers goes to show. And obviously you're now in the Department of Education, which is so fitting. But on to Anne Jenkin. I've heard the story before, and it's an awesome one. So why don't you recount how you ran into Anne and what did she say to you, and how did she woo you?
Well, the first thing is the state of mind I was in. I'd done nearly 30 years in business. I'd lived and worked in different parts of the world. I'd really enjoyed it, but I was at the point where I'd been taking 100 flights a year. I'd lived in Madrid for 8 years. My husband had lived in UK. It had been full on. It had been fantastic, but it's sort of, I was at the stage where I didn't want the next 30 years to be like that, because you do give up a lot as well. So I was in that state of mind of thinking, what should I do next? I'd come back to the UK. I wanted to sort of be a bit more rooted in my community, I suppose. That was what I was searching for. And during that time, we went to the theatre, which in itself was a pretty big achievement, because my husband also, works all over the place, and the chance was being there. And it was in the week, and we were at the theatre, and we met somebody we both knew, who worked for a Japanese company, and he was with Anne, and they both knew each other because they had kids that had gone to the same school. And all of these kids were now in their 20s and 30s, but they'd kept in touch. And during the interval, we just chatting, you get your glass of wine. We were chatting, and during the 15 minutes she said to me, have you ever thought of being an MP? And I think he might have suggested it as well. It just very quickly got onto the MP story, and I said no, I had never ever thought about it, which sounds a bit lame actually, doesn't it, in comparison to a lot of my colleagues who sort of woke up at the age of 12 and wanted to be Prime Minister or whatever. And it does sound a bit lame to be 46 and not even have given it a thought, but and that's how old I was. And but I am very curious. So she said, come for a cup of tea in the House of Lords. I went. We had a long conversation. I'll never forget it. Actually, it was sat in the tea room, not the tea room, the Pugin room, yeah, with a cup of tea. And what she basically made me see was that I had a lot to offer. And I think she's done that for so many people. I mean, she's really focused on diversity in politics, largely on more women, but she also has a very good look at also the experiences, the diversity of experiences, the diversity of backgrounds. And, she said to me, coming from Knowsley and being a Conservative in itself is relatively rare. And, the business background you've had and your sort of start in life as well is there's a lot of people who have a similar start to me. Probably more people have a similar start to me than, go to fantastic schools and go to Oxford to study PPE. And she just said, you really could help, because you've got that sort of understanding background, but also the business experience you've got, nearly 30 years of kind of achieving stuff in business is something that, we want more of in politics. And so she was very convincing saleswoman. And it's important because I don't think many people, and certainly many women, have that confidence from the get-go that this is what they're going to do, and how to navigate what is actually quite a difficult route to get into. And she, not only did she help give me the confidence, but she really helped navigate the whole route as well. She really did sort of tell me all the things you needed to do to be able to get selected.
Yeah, and I mean, she's been on this podcast in the last series, and her story is phenomenal. But I think you are one of my favourite case studies, because you also then went on to become director of Women to Win. So you really really embedded yourself, and actually in that role, also did a lot of what Anne did for people like yourself, but for other women. So it's really cool. It's like a domino effect.
Yeah, and I now know loads of the women candidates, and many of them who came in the last election, because, I'd met them at some point. We'd either gone out to events to try and encourage more women to come forward, or I'd met them at certain training sessions. And it is so rewarding. I mean, gosh, she's relentless anyway, so she probably doesn't feel that rewarded. She probably just got another goal that she's set for herself. But to sit there now and see all the women that we have in Parliament with all the range of backgrounds as well, and all the range of experience, and they're just brilliant. I'm really proud of my female colleagues. It just feels like there's 87 of us now. Yeah, it's wonderful, and it feels like a very close group, because all of us pretty much have been nurtured by Anne.
Yeah, incredible. Fairy godmother.
She is,
She's
yeah.
a fairy godmother. Yeah, really, really lovely. So what is it that sort of works to encourage, well, obviously every woman is different, but what have you learned through your time, either through witnessing Anne or as director of Women to Win? How do you get women interested, and what are the sort of blocks that, prevent them from doing it, and that you have to sort of break through?
I think the first thing is really the confidence and making people understand that it doesn't really matter what kind of journeys they've had. They really have got some great experiences that they can offer. And ultimately, the role as an MP, the one I think many of my colleagues love, is the constituency role. It's that it's the people that you serve, the people you represent, particularly those that need your help. There's nothing more rewarding than somebody coming in at a real low point in their life, almost desperate at that point because they've tried everything else, and you being able to help them. It's the most rewarding thing. So that's something that is really important, that people understand the breadth of the role, because a lot of people see politics on the telly. They might look at Question Time and think, God, I don't want to do that. Or they might look at a chamber, a rowdy debate, and think, why would you want to spend your life rowing across those aisles?
Yeah.
But actually, most of it is really much more constructive than that. So I think that's the first thing. She opens up the roles. And that's kind of something that most people need to feel, that they understand it, and the confidence. And you'll be better at some things, and people will always have something to overcome. Public speaking is often something that people feel very nervous about, and I think everyone across the country does. I remember when I worked in a company once, talking to somebody about giving presentations, and this woman said to me, I'd rather stand on the edge of a cliff and somebody pour spiders down my back. That's how bad I feel about it. And I thought, okay, maybe this isn't the job for you then. So in terms of sales, but some people are absolutely terrified of it. So trying to overcome that is to build the confidence to do that is really quite important. There's then really practical barriers. So if you've got a young family, how the first thing you think about is, how on earth does all this work with a young family? I wasn't in that position, but many of my colleagues are, and so they have to figure that out. And it has got a friendlier workplace from that environment, but there's still more to do. And then there's the other aspect, which I think has become more prominent recently, which is the social media, the abuse, the threats, the impact on your family of that. And it's not direct threats necessarily to your family, although some people's family have suffered that, but it's how your family feel about it. They they feel almost powerless to help what they see as a massive injustice of what people are saying about you, almost as though you're this subhuman being. And I think that's also quite tricky, and it will put a lot of people off. And most of us probably are slightly ignorant to that, which is why we kind of get involved. And then once you're involved, there are ways that you can manage it a little bit better. Not going on Twitter is quite a big one, and quite a few of my colleagues have come off Twitter because they know it doesn't really add much value, it doesn't get them to their constituents, and it's really just full of pain from a personal viewpoint.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So moving on to place, what place, or you're allowed, you've become a bit more flexible through the course of this podcast, we're allowed more than one. What place or places have really left a mark on your life and also impacted your thinking and possibly politics?
Well, the one, if I had just one, it's Liverpool more than anything. I grew up in Liverpool. I grew up in the 70s and 80s and 90s in Liverpool. And, it really even, the reason I'm a Conservative, because I think it's fair to say in Knowsley, it's not the natural home of Conservatives. I don't think I ever met another one or anybody else who admitted to voting Conservative. Although since I've become an MP, one of my uncles crept up to me at a family and whispered in my ear that he'd voted Conservative, but it was very much a big secret. But Liverpool, the things, I started work at 16 in a car factory. I saw, there was a lot of changes in the 80s, manufacturing. I was part of, witnessing that, and Liverpool City Council going bankrupt. Well, you didn't have to be around in the 80s. You could be there right now, and exactly the same thing is happening almost in terms of not bankruptcy, but those sort of really bad dealings and the sort of corruption that's involved. And those things really shaped my politics. That's how I became Conservative, a natural Conservative in a way, because I kind of looked at the alternative and what Margaret Thatcher had been talking about and what she was trying to do in terms of changing the economy, and really how she was sort of taking on the unions. And I could see that the road we were on with the unions in the 70s and the 80s was not going to take us anywhere. In fact, it wasn't taking us anywhere. It was taking us backwards, and we were in a highly competitive, globalized world, as though you could sort of choose to remain where you were. And that's actually always struck me, about our we sort of level up, and I always felt like that. I felt it was a leveling up agenda even then, and I've always felt the other parties kind of level down, try to get everybody down to some base level. So I just that's kind of really influenced my politics, really influenced me, influenced lots of things in my life. Most of my friends are still back in Liverpool. But then I think probably Tokyo and Madrid, I would have to add to that, because I did, when I was in my mid-20s, go to work in Tokyo for a couple of years, which was a life-changing experience, because it was just so different. It was the most different place I've ever been. It was a complete contrast to Liverpool or London and the UK. And just working there, as a woman in the 90s was tough, but it was a life sort of changing experience. And then I lived in Madrid for 8 years. So I love Spain. I feel I've got loads of mates there. I've still got a flat there, actually, which I rent out because I left at the end of 2009. So after the financial crash, and let's just say it has struggled to recover actually ever since then, economically. So I always, I've seen a lot of the impact of recessions as well. I suppose that's something I've witnessed at various times, and the impact that has on people, which is what makes now being in a position in politics where we are right now, looking at the impacts of the pandemic, the massive road ahead in terms of economic recovery, plus all the other things we've got to change. To find myself in this job, the skills, apprenticeships and skills role at a time when it's going to be vital to our country really to get these things right, but also to the individuals, the life-changing impact it has to individuals. So I feel like a lot of my life experiences in different parts of the world have kind of been leading to this point.
Exactly. No, it's really apt. And so one of the things you're probably most known for, or best known for, is that you're the first former apprentice to hold the office of Minister for Apprenticeships. So obviously that's one of the first thing that springs to mind when I think of you. What people don't tend to know about you, which is so awesome, is that you also, your business background, but also the fact that you are a Sloan Fellow from London Business School. So talk us through that journey. How did you start as an apprentice and end up at London Business School doing a Sloan Fellowship?
Yeah, and I'm glad you asked about that, because I don't think many people really know. Well, first of all, know that I'm a Sloan Fellow. Secondly, if they've even heard of it, know what it is. And effectively, it's kind of like an MBA, but it's for more senior people. So you've got to have done, I think, 15 years at least as a senior exec, and then pass the test to get onto it. It's only run in MIT, Stanford, and London Business School, so it's quite a sort of exclusive course. Yeah. And it's basically where sort of people in their sort of mid-career go to really top up their skills. So I think it's kind of like, what I'm trying to persuade other people to do now is, the world changes around you quite a lot. You need to top up your skills. My apprenticeship was fantastic. I started it at 16. I worked there for 8 years. I went, around the whole of the factory, learning how the whole thing sort of fits together, which was, just a brilliant experience. Plus, they sponsored me 1 day a week to go up to degree level. But that had been in the 80s and early 90s. And if you think about the world and the world of technology and how we do things and the business operating models and increased globalization and consolidation of tech, there's so many things that have happened. And the Sloan Fellowship is basically a chance to go back and not only get higher level skills, but really update yourself. And it's got a big focus on leadership and strategy. And it really does look to create the leaders of the future. Usually many of them go into business. Or stay in business, because it's largely got business related things. But it is a fantastic course. And I did it when I was 42, and I think first of all, getting on the thing was really tough. I mean, you had to get really, really high GMAT scores, which I'm not ashamed to admit took me several times and several courses that I basically paid to go on to get quick enough to be able to do this test, because it's also timed. So that was
I remember looking into that because I was considering doing an MBA at one point. And then with books, I have to admit, it was probably 60 or 70% of a reason, other than, being able to afford it and need a scholarship, but it's like really put me off. So done.
I think the book, I remember sitting on a beach in my holidays, and I think the book, it was probably thicker than my sunbed in terms of the thickness of it. I still remember trying to read it on a beach and trying to do these mental maths and get, you have to get really, really quick at doing it. So, and that's a challenge when in your 40s, because you're not in that sort of mindset. So that was the first thing. But then going back to school, I remember, because it's actually the first time I'd ever gone full time to tertiary education. I'd done everything else part time, and I'd done executive development programs with the Institute de Empresa in Madrid. I'd done lots of other training, but I'd always done it part-time. I'd always done it whilst working. And I remember it was funny, I went there in January 2010, and it was really bad snow, and I bought Converse because I just kind of felt like I had to get into that student mood, and I had a backpack Converse, and anyway, it was a disaster because it was about 4 inches of snow. So I slipped along Regent's Park to get there, and it's like it really does put you back to school. It's a very scary but rejuvenating, let's say, situation. I was the only British woman on the course.
Really?
It was very international. It's people from all over the world. I've got very, very good friends from it, but it really was. It was a tough course, but it was a fantastic course, and really everything, from corporate finance to sort of strategy, leadership, digital data, the art and science of modeling, really, really high level of training. So I did that, and I did then go back into the corporate world, but it was actually whilst I was there that I decided to look to do something else, because there's a professor there called Linda Grattan. She's written quite a lot of books, and she basically turned up and she said, many of you, I can't remember what percentage, 20-30% or so, have got a decent chance of living to 100. And everyone's like, oh God, I hope it's me, that's great news. And then she said, but you've got a 100% chance of working till you're nearly 70. That's for sure true. And then you start to, and she said, and what you need to think about, because she said that sometimes sounds horrifying to people, but what you need to think about is you need to think about, what is your second career going to be? What is your third career going to be? How are you going to get the skills to be able to navigate your way through this, and the skills to get to the point where you can kind of choose more what you want to do when you're older and that kind of stuff. And it was that gave me permission to think about a second career. What was my second career going to be? Now, I did get pulled back into the corporate world for a couple of years, but it was that sort of gave me permission to think that's a doable thing. You can do something completely different that you've never thought of. Because of course, my apprenticeship, I didn't think of what I wanted to do. It always makes me laugh now when people talk about careers. I don't think many 16-year-olds know what they want to do. They just know they want to do something fun, interesting, that's going to earn them money, give them some skills. And so the apprenticeship was brilliant for that, because you saw all the jobs in the car factory, and you could kind of figure out which ones you thought were a good fit for you. But most people don't get that. You just randomly end up in places, but this was like, I actually will have a chance to choose when I'm older, when I'm more knowledgeable, and when I've got maybe a little bit more financial security. So that was kind of the journey. But yeah, the Sloan Fellowship was another big part of putting myself and my head in a different space.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. I've definitely heard of Linda Grattan.
Yeah, she talks about the future of work a lot as well, which I think, based on what's happened with the pandemic, she was very much, had a lot of foresight, because she was talking about that flexibility, that blended, that ability to work in different ways, and probably more freelance ways as well.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. That is really cool. So now that you are Minister for Apprenticeships and Skills, and from have experienced apprenticeships firsthand and relearning, and you can speak from experience on all these topics, which is just brilliant. But looking now, sort of, especially with COVID, you already talked about the impact of recessions. Looking at sort of the economic recovery that we need to go through, what is the importance of skills as part of that?
Well, I think all the key components of our economic recovery, all of the plans, all of the things we have in place are all highly dependent on skills, but they're all highly dependent on skills where we have a massive shortage or we just don't have them. They're new skills. So if you think about, some of the key things, building back better, the huge infrastructure investment that the government's making, and not only our government, by the way, many countries around the world, the first thing governments will do to try and recover their economies is do what governments can do, bring forward investment, invest in infrastructure. It's a very common reaction to any recession, actually. So what you're going to find is every country at the same time is going to be trying to build back better. Some of them do even have the same slogan. I think the US have the same slogan, right? And so when you think about the impact that has on any and all jobs related to the construction industry, there are massive shortages that are going to be, that we can see ahead of us in the construction industry. And, we really do. And there's so many jobs in the construction industry. People normally think of, bricklayers or electricians or plumbers, but the whole host of jobs in that industry that are required to basically make sure that investment, we can create jobs, we can bring forward the infrastructure, and we can sort of build back better. Then we've got the other huge objective that we have, which is net zero by 2050. And if you look at net zero, I'm co-chairing a Green Jobs task force with the Energy Minister, Anne-Marie Trevelyan, at the moment. And you look at, there's two real key challenges. One is all the people who've got skills in industries that will become redundant, that will be replaced with new stuff. So, oil and gas for renewables, or, combustion engines, and everyone involved, both designing them, building them and maintaining them, to electric vehicles. All of the changes, even the farming practices, all of the changes that will be required need skills. And they're skills that we either have to upskill or create people who have those skills. And the one thing that I think is a real opportunity for us is we have massive skill shortages in the country. And to have that at the same time as you have growing unemployment is the tragedy that we're trying to avoid. And that's why we've basically put a lot of investment into incentivizing apprenticeships and traineeships. The Prime Minister's announced a lifetime skills guarantees to give every adult permission to retrain and to fund and support them. And, it's trying to get that through.
Yeah, I mean, I remember seeing the announcement that adults are going to be given free courses. I think that was announced last year. Is that coming into effect this year?
Yeah, it's already come into effect as of the 1st of April, 406 new courses in all kinds of things. And what we've done is basically made sure that they match to skills shortages, as opposed to areas that we don't think there's going to be a big skills need in the future, or indeed there may be even oversupply of skills in some places. But the other thing which is really cool, which we've piloted, so a lot of people may not have seen it, we've done about 80 of them, and there's many, many more to come, is these things called skills boot camps. Because a lot of adults think, I enjoyed the experience of getting the backpack, packing my pencil case and buying the Converse, because I kind of enjoyed going back, because I'd never done it before. And it was an opportunity when I went to London Business School. But a lot of adults either don't have the space to be able to do that. You have to work as well. Or they just have so many demands on their time. So these skills boot camps are fantastic. I've been to see a couple. They're sort of 12 to 16 weeks intensive, and they've done a lot of them actually in digital, because digital skills as well as construction are the other massive global shortage. Everything's gone digital. There's not a single thing that isn't digital. And when people say they want digital marketing, it's because basically everybody used to go to shops and the marketing was all about merchandising and your window displays and your catalogs or your brochures or whatever. Now it is really all about your online experience, and that's digital marketing. So there's so much demand for those kind of digital skills as well. So we did some boot camps, and people could come, women who were returning after having their family, they had no experience in this whatsoever. That digital revolution had happened while they were, bringing up their families or whatever. People who'd done completely different careers. It's very open in terms of people who can get on them, and it's 12 to 16 weeks, really intensive, and at the end of it you come out with skills that are really valuable in cybersecurity or digital or marketing or data analytics. And it's been really successful because it's done with companies as well who basically have a skills shortage. So you get a guaranteed interview, and many of them are getting jobs. So we're just rolling that out, and we're also including it in other things like construction skills. So we've got welding and electricians. And even if you don't get the skills to be, you know, a completely qualified electrician in 16 weeks, you basically get a long way down, so you can cut a lot off the apprenticeship. But what it means is when you join the workplace, you do have a lot of skills already. You might not be a fully formed electrician, but you're really valuable to a company because you can rewire some things under supervision or whatever. So it's a brilliant way, quick and short and sharp, of getting adults into their second career, into a really valuable second career. And the reason I love this is not only the opportunity it brings, but there's a lot of adults, and these will be the kids I went to school with. You know, 92% of the kids in my school left without the, 4 or 5 GCSEs or O levels as they were at the time. And now, if you think about, you know, when we say half of our adults don't have the skills, etc., well, that's because they're basically just older, right? They're the same kids, but they're now 20 or 30 years older. And that shot hasn't come their way again, either because they've been, you know, busy. Life is sometimes, you know, all consuming. They've been really busy, and you just get trapped in this sort of, you have to work to pay your bills, but you don't have the space to create these skills. So that is what I really love about it. And I've met so many people now who've got on them. The work coaches in the job centres tell you about them as well. And they go on these and they say, I cannot believe I've got this opportunity. I always quite fancied this at school, but this opportunity never came my way. And, you know, I've tinkered around with a car, but now I can't believe I'm on my way to become an electrician. And, I'm getting an apprenticeship that's going to, you know, give me these skills. And there's also lots of different things. I mean, you know, photonics, which is deeply technical area of lasers and data. And, you know, these are skills that we are all across the country going to offer these skills boot camps. It's so exciting. And that's all part of the Prime Minister's lifetime skills guarantee. So there's full-time courses, there's the same courses that you'll be able to take part-time and blended. And then there's the skills boot camps are the sort of pillars of that. And I hope it can revolutionize opportunity, level up at any age, any stage, wherever you are in the country. I'm really excited by them.
That's very inspiring and so important, and such an important time to be doing that. How does that compare to other countries?
Yeah, well, we've done, so there's a lot of work in this area at the moment, and we've got a white paper, a skills for jobs white paper, and we've got a bill coming through Parliament. And the reason we're doing that is because we have compared our systems to other countries, and we're not doing as well at the moment. We have too many people who are not getting the access to the right skills training, too many people not going down the technical routes or the vocational routes, too many people possibly going off to university and then not getting graduate jobs at the end of it. I think there's about 34% of graduates now who are not in graduate jobs. And, you know, and that's because they didn't know actually there were any other routes available to them. And so the whole sort of skills white paper and skills for jobs revolution is to make sure we improve the system all the way through. So it's putting a big focus on really high quality technical options, an alternative to A levels called T levels. It's putting a lot more emphasis on careers, and that's even from a younger age, from when you first start secondary school. You know, and the careers interactions you get in school, every child's going to have the chance to do is to interact with real businesses, you know, go into businesses, ask lots of questions, see the kind of jobs that are available, see what I saw when I was going around my apprenticeship, all the different jobs, because pretty much every industry has every job. Yeah. I was talking to, this is a name drop for you, I was talking to David Putnam and Barbara Broccoli about creative industries and the skills required yesterday. And they basically said, this is the second biggest industry in our country. We're really good at it. We're really successful. You know, and Barbara Broccoli was obviously the producer of the James Bond films, you know, and her dad obviously started that. And we were talking about the skills. And I said, I can't believe you've got a skills shortage. I mean, who doesn't want to work in these industries? They're so glamorous. But when you look at some elements of the structure, the type of skills we need, the routes into those skills, they're not there. So we're looking to build all of the routes so that all of these industries, whether it's Google, Amazon Web Services, the NHS, our defence, we're spending an extra 24 billion in defence, all of these, that people have routes into those areas, and we really make sure that that's much more widespread, and particularly in areas of the country where those opportunities are just never offered. So that's a big part of the revolution that we're going to go through. When we compared ourselves to some other countries, we don't do as well as that. By the time we're finished, we'll do way better. That's my goal anyway.
Very good. So moving on to the object. What object has impacted your thinking?
I don't know about impacted my thinking, but it's a constant, a constant reminder. I think is probably in my parliamentary office. I am very proud to have my grandfather's miner's lamp, and it's a quite. I mean, he worked in the pits all of his life, and for some reason or other, I don't quite know how this happened, but he was looking after us one day. There must have been some childcare issues. And anyway, he ended up taking my sister and me to work. And we actually went down the coal mine. And we were kind of, I don't know, about 8 or 9 or something like that. And I remember it vividly. It takes forever. I mean, literally, you're going down a mile or more. You're in this big crate with the metal shutters, surrounded by miners, all of whom have got the lights on the head, and the sort of clothes on. You get down there, it is so claustrophobic. Trying to breathe, it is obviously pitch black, and then they go off into these tunnels and basically chip away at the walls for the whole day. And when people in the 80s got very sort of sentimental about the coal industry, I couldn't really understand it, because the health and safety of the people who worked there as well. My granddad broke his back eventually in a mining accident, and I couldn't understand why everyone wanted to work there. Now, I know it was a financial thing, right? There was you got paid extra money or whatever, but once we'd got ourselves into a position, certainly now with renewables and stuff, I remember when I stood in St Helens in 2015, and it was 2015. It used to have 6 coal mines, and the people who were Labour activists were shouting at me, you closed our coal mines, the Tories closed our coal mines. And I said, are you kidding me? Do you really think that your kids would want to do that for a job now? Can you imagine your children? I can't imagine wanting to do it at any point, but it was a really tough job. It was a really dangerous job. It was a really unhealthy job, and I just found the atmosphere was claustrophobic, and I just thought, that's I'm very grateful for everybody who did do that job, and I have huge admiration for them, but I don't aspire for lots of our population to be in those jobs today, right? And so that's probably had a big impact on me, reminding me that that of what the reality was of people doing those jobs. Now, I know they loved doing them, because what it meant is they earned a bit more than they would have done in probably other roles, and it gave them, and they were family men who did it for their families. They were all men, but it was tough, and it isn't something that I think is something we want to go back to. So it always astonishes me when people talk about that as those are the good old days, because for me, I was very struck by that, and I thought, maybe that made me work hard in school as well, because I thought, God Almighty, I want to have more choices than this.
Yeah, that's interesting. So now that you mentioned your parliamentary office, and I mean, listeners won't be able to see, but I can see you because we're recording on Zoom. I suspect you're in your ministerial office at the moment.
I am.
You're now obviously, you're living the life of a politician and a minister, living the life of a politician to the full. Has it met your expectations? Is it what you expected it to be, or?
It completely exceeded my expectations, and that is after a sales pitch from Baroness Anne Jenkin, which is pretty full on, but it's completely exceeded my expectations. So there's a number of factors to that. The first is actually it's much friendlier than you think inside the building. There is a bit of theatre around some of the chamber performance or whatever, but actually many MPs get on a lot better than the impression that we leave perhaps the public with. So that's the first thing. It's very friendly, and in a way we're all in the same boat, right? We have different views on things. In some cases the views aren't wildly different on many things, and all of us really do want to make a difference to be able to improve things for people. So I think that's a genuine common cause, as it were. The other thing is the amount of things you can get involved in. It's almost unlimited how many things you can get involved in. I remember one of the first things, one of the first campaigns I got involved with, which was Orkambi, which was a drug that we were, it hadn't been approved by NICE. It was a very expensive drug for kids with cystic fibrosis. I had no clue about kids with cystic fibrosis. I had no clue about this drug. I had no clue about this cause. But in my local hospital, I'll still remember Charlotte and a little boy, Jack, who explained it all to me. And as a result of that one encounter, I could join that campaign, which eventually, there was loads of people in that campaign, not least the parents of every kid in the country with cystic fibrosis. But, in the end, that drug became available, So that you can join any of these campaigns and you can get involved in things. And then the third thing is the constituency side of it. People say, MPs, they're all the same, they can't make a difference. Completely wrong. I've got people out who've been incorrectly imprisoned abroad, home. I've got people into care homes when they didn't have, they were getting refused, they couldn't get, I've got people school places, I've got homeless people into homes, homeless people into jobs. I've helped a number of people get new bathrooms or kitchens from their housing association or carpets. People get opportunities, jobs, training. And all of them individual things, and that's because people come and ask you, and you basically can help them. And the power of being an MP is a convening role. It's got some status if you write on behalf of that person, who, by the way, will have tried so many different avenues to get whatever it is they needed. And the computer said no, or the person said no, and you can unlock that, and that's so rewarding. So I think it's exceeded my expectations, the role in general. And the ministerial role, I never even thought about it. I hadn't really considered, ministers or what the role is. It's an odd role. It's an odd role for somebody who's worked in business for 30 years, because in business, you set the strategy, you build the teams, you hire and fire the right people, you set the objectives, you make sure everything's aligned, and you deliver. And if you don't deliver, your company's in trouble, you have to make people redundant, or you're seen as a poor performer and out you go. So you have to deliver. In this role, you have to deliver. It's really important. People are relying on you, people are depending on you. But the delivery arm is this completely separate organisation that you try to peek into, called the civil service, and but it's its own organisation, and it's not one that you control or whatever. So, and delivery is not something that is second nature even. So we've just been, a lot of us have been on courses now. They're trying to improve this across the civil service, but also ministers with the Infrastructure and Projects Authority, because many things don't get implemented very well. And it's, why is that? Why is it some of these things just really don't work? And it's really trying to improve that. So that's something I'm kind of grappling with. Most people probably don't have the sort of long business experience, so they don't have that contrast. But for me, it's trying to find out how you get stuff done with that kind of sort of arm's length relationship.
Have you had any, thick of it moments?
Yes, I have, but only, and actually, I did have somebody once, and they kind of came in the room. It was something to do with people. I think it was something to do with some comms thing that had gone wrong, and they'd sort of kind of come in, and it was all sort of shouting, and I said, hang on, so, what's with the Malcolm Tucker moment? Sit down and, behave sensibly. And I'm not going to be shouted at by anyone, certainly not somebody impersonating Malcolm Tucker. And then the other one is the very helpful minister. This is so funny. The first week, well, it happens all the time. People will say, oh, that's very helpful, minister. And honestly, I do try to be helpful. I thought I was being helpful. But then you go and watch the old Yes Ministers, and effectively it's all like very helpful minister, right? Okay, she's gone right now. So it's those kind of moments. Conscious of time, which is another one they do all the time. Conscious of time, which basically means shut up. Conscious of their time. So there's all those kind of really, I find them funny moments, because there is, the people who wrote those comedies, certainly they're well observed in many ways. They're well observed. So there are those moments, but ultimately people are well motivated, and what you have to do is figure out how to give people the space and cover to take that, good motivation, to be able to actually have the courage to step up, to take accountability for the achievement, which is actually a really difficult but really rewarding if you do it. So, and that's the journey we're on. And I think that's going to work well, and particularly in skills. Education in the DfE, it's quite a long-term thing. A lot of these policies, you'll see the implications of them 15 years afterwards or whatever. Where, and I keep saying to them, there are some policies here where the rubber hits the air, but in the skills agenda, the rubber hits the road pretty quickly, right? If we do not have these skills, we will not be building that road in that place. Exactly. And if we don't have these skills, we will not be leading in science and technology, or vaccine development, or finance, or the creative industries. We won't be making the next James Bond here, that kind of thing.
Exactly. So I've got 2 quick fire questions for you. The first is, who is your favourite non-Conservative politician?
Well, actually, I have loads, because I play football on the Women's Parliamentary Football Club, which is only me and Tracy Crouch, actually, who are the Conservatives. So, Louise Haigh, Steph Peacock, Alison McGovern, and Hannah Bardell. And we do things together, right? We do things socially. So we've got to become really good friends. And then the 2 I probably worked with closely would be Jess Phillips and Layla Moran. I co-chaired APPGA Women in Work with Jess, and actually my colleague Laura Farris now does that, and she's loving it as much as I did. And Layla Moran and I were on the Public Accounts Committee together, so we did quite a lot of things with homelessness, and we got to be friends. And Jess, Layla and I all went to Tanzania together to see a refugee camp as well, which was a deeply moving joint experience. And then the one guy, because I was conscious they're all girls, is probably George Howarth, who's the nosy MP, because my mum and dad are like, oh, have you met him? I've not, nobody's met him, right? So I made a point of meeting him, and quite often I'll have a drink with him, and he's from the area as well. And he's he's a bit older than me, but we've got a sort of common experience, and I'm sure we probably know loads of people in common, but we haven't dared to go there yet.
And finally, what's your biggest bugbear of politics?
I think it is definitely the sort of people seeing the party before the person, identity politics, dehumanizing people. Dehumanizing people who are trying to do their best, and and obviously every element of armchair warriors and keyboard warriors on Twitter, who, and particularly those that are abusive. So I think that is my biggest bugbear, and I don't know when it happened, but I have lots of friends in different parties, because I see the people first and their motivations genuinely.
Actually, I forgot, I love asking best advice. What advice have you been given that you would like to pass on?
My dad's advice, probably, bearing in mind the skills agenda, which he said to me, just remember, an hour is always an hour. The only thing you can change in life, which will change your life, is how much you earn in that hour. And the only way you'll change that is having skills that somebody wants.
Very good. Gillian, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. It's been lovely. Thanks so much, Laura.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed that, please leave a review and subscribe, and tell your friends and family. And far more importantly, if you know of women who you think should consider becoming a politician or an MP, let them know. Or let them know via Twitter by tagging them and using the hashtag AskHerToStand. And if you have any questions for me, please contact me on Twitter. I'm at Laura Round and I would love to hear from you. Thank you. Until next time.